Serious? What is the creepiest thing you've experienced that you can't rationalize explain? I had just finished unloading a flatbed trailer full of hay, sat down on the back of the trailer and laid back to look at the night sky, when I suddenly felt like vomiting, like projectile vomiting. And there is also a plate and 5 screws in my arm and it immediately started vibrating and felt like it was heating up inside my arm. The cows around me started to run in random directions and I'm isolated. No cell service. No Dang, you must have had one heck of a current going through your body. When I was about 5 I saw an all grey old man sitting with his knees against his chest under my bedside table. I did a 180, went back downstairs, and never mentioned it to anyone. Still think about it to this day. My culture believes that the veil is thin for those between 0-6. That's why so many little kids remember seeing someone that wasn't there to others. When I was a kid I shared a bed with my dad. One night with both me and my dad in bed the radio was softly playing a local FM station when a loud and disturbing satanic voice started mumbling incomprehensible nonsense, to me at least, for 10 seconds. I asked my dad what the heck that was as I was totally disturbed and he told me in a serious tone he will explain what happened in the future. It spooked me as I've never heard something like this on the radio before, and we always had the radio on most nights. I'm old enough to understand some semblance of English at that point in time, so that incomprehensible mumbling is totally out of place. I could ask my dad now but I doubt he will remember it. Who knows? It could just be the FM station making a sex joke and my dad obviously isn't gonna explain what it means. Don't know why, but I can't forget this seemingly insignificant incident. Well, now you have to ask him. A long while back, when I was living with my first girlfriend, my mom came to visit. One morning while they were in the kitchen, I was sleeping was in that state of half awake half asleep, and could hear them talking in the kitchen. As I'm lying there, in that state of twilight, I start dreaming I'm on a beach, like a cold, North Atlantic beach, like the coast of Ireland or England, with a rocky shore instead of sand, and I can hear the footsteps of someone coming closer to me. I'm listening to my GF and my mother in the kitchen, and at the same time I'm listening to this man approach. The whole time, I could tell the man had a sense that he could see me as well, and then the footsteps get right up to me, and I hear them stop. Then there's a pause, and then son of a bitch if I don't feel his hand on my arm, and I sit straight up, freak the frick out, and I sweat to God I felt the lingering sensation of a hand, as if it had just had a hold of my forearm lingering. Never told anyone about this. I often wonder if, one morning, a fisherman out in Ireland was out on the beach and somehow saw me in the mists, then reached out to see if I was real. My favorite so far, inexplicable but not too creepy. Thanks for sharing. Posted this before but, way back in the day when building plastic airplane models were a thing, my brother saved up his allowance for a month to buy this certain kit. The day he brings it home my mother and father tell us we have to go to the grocery store and we set off for the supermarket. On arrival back home my brother races up to his room to start his model while the rest of us unpack the car. A few seconds later he come into the kitchen with a weird look on his face. Not frightened but not okay either. He asks us is this a joke? We all have no idea what he's talking about and ask him what's going on. He repeats is this some kind of joke, almost yelling it at us. My mom now realizes he's serious and grabs him by the hand and asks what's wrong. My brother turns and says very funny guys what did you do, buy another model and swap mine out for it? My dad kinda laughed and said no what are you talking about? My brother rushes upstairs to his room and flies back down, this time with a fully glued and painted model, the exact same one he purchased before. The box is shredded on his bedroom floor. My parents turn white, call the neighbors to see if anyone was seen on the property and start checking the rest of the house. Nothing else was touched, no doors were unlocked or windows sealed. This wasn't the only odd thing that would happen there, but I remember it vividly because of my parents' reaction. There is no humanly possible way that model was built, glued and painted in the time we were gone from the house. I would assume a prank by my dad, who has that kind of humor, but it probably was the only time I've ever seen him seem scared. He has never admitted to it in 30 plus years. When I was in high school, we used to play this stupid game we called Michael Myers. It was basically just hide and seek but in the dark. You had to play at night with no lights on and the curtains drawn, no sounds playing, and Michael Myers had to wait in the basements for a few minutes while everyone hid. One night we decide to play while my mom is out working. It was my brother, a few of my cousins, my friend, and my little sister was probably 6 or so at the time. After a few rounds I am found first and have to be Michael. I don't like being the seeker alone, so I ask if my friend can do it with me. Everyone was fine with it, so we go and sit in the basement and wait. It's important during this part that you remain silent so you can hear where people are running to give you an advantage. After the 5-minute wait time, we left the basement and stood in the office for a minute to let our eyes adjust to the dark. We left the office after searching briefly and went into the dining room. From the dining room you could see into the kitchen in the left and the living room on the right. We were pretty sure we heard everyone run upstairs, so we started heading to the living room when my friend said my sister was hiding on top of the fridge. I look over and she was peering through the doorway from on top of the fridge. You could see her hair hanging and she was small. I assumed my brother put her up there as a joke because she definitely couldn't get up there herself. I told my friend that we would just ignore her because she couldn't be seeker anyway. So we went upstairs to find everyone else. We found my cousins first. My brother was very good at this game, and since we knew where my sister was, we just gave up searching and yelled that he could come out from hiding. We switched on some lights and he came out of hiding with my sister. My friend immediately started freaking out and asked my brother if she had been with him the whole time because we definitely saw her on top of the fridge. My brother ran downstairs turning the lights on as he went, but there was no one down there. He checked everywhere in the house. No one. I really felt like he had to have been messing with us, but we would have heard someone moving around. The house was seriously dead quiet. I have tried to figure out everything it could have been beside my sister, but I just don't know what it was. It's really not a great memory and still gives me goosebumps. I never played the game again and was never really comfortable in that house after that. I have images of the girl from The Grudge on top of your fridge. Thanks for the goosebumps. My godfather's mouth hung open while I was staring at him in his coffin. I was 7, and it was my first time seeing a dead body. The family blamed an inexperienced mortician, but until now I can never be sure if that was the case. We had 2 doorbells in our house. One was the one for the front door and played your typical doorbell sound, and the other one was disconnected. No button to push. I'm at home. Mom's in the TV room watching the tube. The other doorbell rings. It rings a melody, not ding dong. I instinctively walk to the front door and open it. We had a vestibule which has a glass storm doors and floor to ceiling windows. I see a man in a trench coat and 1930s style hat, like Don Tracy, walking away from the house, so I go and open the storm door to get his attention, but as soon as I open the glass door, seeing him the entire time, as soon as the frame of the door passes over him, he disappears. I tell my mom WTF just happened, and she says, oh yeah, he's the suitor who is looking for the young lady that used to live here decades ago. I don't bother answering the door when the other bell rings. WTF mom. Simping even in the afterlife. Pathetic. This just happened the other night. Was sound asleep, on my side, when I felt someone poking my shoulder real hard, sort of jabbing it with a couple fingers. I sat up in bed so fast it made me a little dizzy. No one was there, but I could feel the exact spot on my shoulder where those fingers had been poking. Couldn't go back to sleep, and even after an hour on Reddit, I could still feel that sore spot on my shoulder. Frick this crap, I'm calling it a night. My mom told me once that the weirdest thing she ever saw was a big white dog that came toward her on the street, but when she turned around, the dog wasn't there anymore. It wasn't a crowded street or anything. It was just gone. The weird part about it is that I've seen the white dog too. I was heading down a street alone and then there was this big white dog next to me. When I turned around, it was gone. I am certain I saw it and that it was there. I don't usually believe in ghosts, and I'm the kind of person to watch ghost vids on YouTube in the middle of the night and go to bed with no problems because I don't believe in that stuff. But that dog thing that happened to both my mom and I is something I think about often. I think that in Native American mythology a white animal sighting is a family member coming back to tell you that he's in heaven now. It's a good sign. I was 10 and visiting my grandma's for the weekend so I could go to a wedding with her. I had woken up in the middle of the night to see my 2 stepbrothers standing over me. Now, I'd have no problem with this. They sleepwalk, but they were 3 states away for a funeral. I ordered something from eBay and something from Amazon. 2 parcels arrive, one plain and one in an Amazon box. Upon opening them I find the Amazon receipt inside the other box. It really felt like I was in the Truman Show and the props guys had made an error. I guess eBay person could have had a spare Amazon box and used it to ship their thing, and the Amazon parcel could have been a third party, so not have had the branded packaging? Freaked me out for a few hours. I've definitely used Amazon boxes envelopes when selling stuff online. You are probably sane. When I was about 10, I was hanging out with my younger brother, 8 at the time, and our neighbor, also 8M, in our house on a normal Saturday afternoon. It was starting to get dark outside and we had the brilliant thought to break out the new Ouija board my brother had gotten as a present recently. We went upstairs to my brother's room, turned off the lights and drew the curtains, and unboxed the Ouija board, which was glow in the dark. Growing up, my brother had 3 small paintings hung on his wall which were depictions of winter, summer, and fall. Had been hung solidly for at least 6 years when this story takes place. This is important later. We started messing around with the Ouija board, with one of us kids obviously pulling on one end of the planchette to manipulate answers. Eventually, we asked, "Are there any spirits here?" and the planchette moved to yes with no obvious manipulation from any of the 3 of us. This was kinda spooky, so we asked, "Do you want us to stop?" and the planchette moved to yes again. Immediately after this, the painting on the far left inexplicably falls off the wall and the glass on it cracks. We freak out, turn on the lights. My mom comes upstairs and reassures us that it's fine. There are no malevolent ghosts, just a coincidence. Whatever. We calm down. My mom leaves to continue making dinner, and we kinda shrug and turn the lights back off to continue playing with the Ouija board. We keep asking it questions and getting nonsense answers until we ask, "Are you angry?" The planchette moves to yes with no pulling from anyone. Right as the painting right next to the one that just fell off the wall also inexplicably falls to the ground, this time shattering the glass. This made us fully freak out. Mom comes upstairs and puts the Ouija board away, and I have literally never played with one since. Our house was old but there was no other paranormal kind of activity, nor do I really believe in ghosts or anything, but this experience was just too strange and creepy to explain. The paintings continued to hang just fine for years after that. When I was a teen, my dad bought and sold salvaged cars as a side hustle. I would drive whatever was in our driveway at the time as my way to get around. He got this one car that I used to joke was haunted because the electric door locks would lock or unlock on their own, making an audible CHK sound. And because the car had been in an accident since it was salvaged. One day while driving with a friend I joked about the haunted car. As a joke I said out loud, "If there's a ghost in here, make it lock right now," and CHK, coincidence. As a joke I said, "Okay, but if it's not a coincidence, do it twice in a row, CHK. I then said, "Haha, I said twice in a row, CHK CHK. It had never done that before. I stopped asking the car for things. If I was a ghost I would screw with people like this. It's not harmful and messes with people enough that they're creeped out. I used to live in a cheap, sketchier, and older neighborhood. My room was upstairs and I had a window facing my backyard. There was some leftover items from the last renters that I found. Planks of wood, tools, and even a rusty butcher knife planted into the ground. The backyard had no fence surrounding it at all, and my parents needed to build one. I remember waking up many nights hearing footsteps in the backyard. They would walk slowly, always leading up to directly below and facing my window. I never looked, but I sensed that I was being watched. Then they would simply walk away. I told my parents desperately, but there wasn't really anything that they could do. A phone was found in our backyard around that time and we returned it. A sketchy character saying that he was chasing after his dog and must have dropped it. Once a fence was built I never heard the footsteps again. Sorry, I'm a terrible storyteller. Dang. Sounds like someone casing your house. When I was a child, I lived in a house that had a very large, 2-story high entryway with a long staircase leading to the entrance. Across from the staircase was a large, antique mirror. I was alone in the house, my mother and siblings out for groceries, and listening to music. When I stopped to look at my own reflection, I saw myself in the reflection of the mirror descend the staircase. I ripped my headphones off and turned around, but I, of course, was not there. No one was. This why I will never ever purchase or own a second-hand mirror. That crap is a gateway to something. Okay, this one is a repost, but I've been scratching my brain for ages for an explanation, and still can't find any. I was looking for a birthday present for a friend. Her being a massive lover of dogs and me spending hours each week hunting down goodies and games at the local flea market. I figured a plushie of a dog would be perfect. My first hunt afterward at the market proved fruitful, and I soon was walking back home with a rather large and cute doggo plush that caught my eye. At the time, my best option to wash any big plushies was to leave them soaking water and laundry detergent in the family bathtub for a bit, coming back later and washing the heck out of them, before hanging them. A few hours and a heavy wet doggo later, I started washing it for real. As soon as I started, I hear a little metallic scraping sound and I get annoyed, fearing that I didn't notice a voice box in the doggo and destroyed it. I squish it for a bit trying to find where the box could be before giving up and returning to ringing, to only notice it was dripping something else rather than water. Blood. I start examining my hands wondering if I didn't wound myself. Nothing. I grab the dog and ring it for a bit, confirming that it was the actual bleeder. 21 years old me start panicking and leaves the bathroom. I manage to calm down and come back to the doggo with a pair of scissors, before starting to open the stitches at its side and opening it. Taking out the wool slowly, I noticed there was a black thrash bag inside the dog. I quickly extract it and open it. A now destroyed by water washing bag of razor blades, a B+ small blood bag, and a bag of white powder. The razors managed to pierce the blood bag while I was washing, causing the bleeding. But now I started panicking. This is Tunisia in 2010. Having a picture of drugs on your phone can send you 10 years behind bars. Cue me grabbing multiple black trash bags and put the guy in them. Spill an entire bottle of bleach in the bathtub. Yes, bad idea. And quickly throw the wrapped doggo in the public trash. Result, a bleach smelling bathtub for a week. A bleach burned hand and thrasher for me for double that time. And a still lingering question. I can get the drug and razors, but why the blood bag? And why in a dog plush? TLDR. Bleeding demon doggo plush turned out to have a blood bag and drugs inside it, scaring me even worse. One time when I was 12 I was on the phone with a friend sitting outside when I saw the guy who was dressed funnily walk by. He was wearing a shirt that was the American flag. It didn't have the flag on it. It was the flag. LOL. A big winter coat. This was in Texas during summer, and short shorts. I laughed and told my friend what I just saw. She was silent for a bit so I asked if she was still there. In a confused and slightly concerned voice she said yeah, it's just that a guy wearing the exact same thing just walked past my house. When I asked her questions about his appearance, I nearly shat myself. This was the exact guy that just walked past my house. We lived 30 minutes apart from each other so there is absolutely no way this guy could be at both our houses at the same time. This happened 6 years ago and creeps me out to this day. TLDR. A man wearing strange clothes walked by both me and a friend who lived 30 minutes away at the exact same time. PS. If I made spelling grammar mistakes that I didn't catch let me know and I'll fix them LMAO. My dad and I were coming home from some event when it was dark and as we were opening the door, the next door neighbor's house, the entire thing started strobing. It wasn't an alarm, it wasn't something in the backyard. My dad even asked the other guy that weekend if they had something going on and he said no. My dad and I kind of shrugged it off but I still think about that. It was so freaking weird. You can accidentally link your messages to your lights, so that when you get a text, your lights strobe. If you have smart lights of course. A group of mates and I saw a bunch of moving lights in the thick of the woods we were camping in, quite some ways up in the air. Moving with ease when doing so should be impossible. It was admittedly dark, and I do feel that there is a rational explanation. but I could never figure it out. Also, and I am not a big believer in things spiritual at all, I was in NZ when my granddad passed in the UK and I felt it. For lack of a better phrase, I immediately texted my dad to check in on him as he was receiving the call saying he had just passed. It was expected and probably a coincidence, but it brought my dad some peace at least. There is a perfectly rational reason for the lights. If I recall correctly, it's butane bubbles being released from swamps, aka swamp farts. When I was growing up, my family lived in a small 2-bedroom trailer. My older sister and I had one room while my parents shared the other. My mom was convinced that it was haunted. From her bed she could see an old reclining chair in the living room. Some nights she would suddenly wake up and see an old man sitting in it, staring out the window. She'd always wake my dad up and send him to go investigate. He'd stomp in the room and turn the empty chair around. This apparently happened quite a bit. I believe my sister also used to claim to see an old man standing in her closet. She was young enough that she doesn't remember much, so I don't have any more story there. Mum also swore that some days she'd hear giggling and see a little blonde girl running down the hallway. At first she'd always assume it was me and go to investigate, only to find the house empty. We moved out of that trailer after a few years. I didn't know anything about this until years later when I was in college. One of my childhood friends and I were hanging out at my parents' place when a paranormal show came on. My dad made a joke about the wife in the show always sending her husband to investigate noises in the middle of the night before following up with "Who does that sound like?" After some prodding, I got my mom to tell the story. She sticks by her story and believes to this day that, while the girl's spirit was friendly, the old man seemed malicious. If the story stopped there, I'd say it could just be my mom having an overactive imagination. However, my friend seemed freaked out by the story. She asked my parents where the trailer was. We lived in a small village, so it wasn't hard to pinpoint. And it turns out that one of her brother's best friends bought the trailer from the older couple that my parents had sold the place to. The whole family swore the place was haunted. They always talked about how a spirit of an old man would sit in a chair in the living room and stare out the window. The trailer passed through a number of different hands before burning down a few years ago. I have a few other weird stories, but this one is by far the hardest for me to explain. Eep. When I was younger, I used to hear crawling sounds in the crawl space that's next to my room. My room was added to the house about 50 years after it was built, so there is a small crawl space between my room and the outer wall of the house, about 2 to 3 feet wide and another 2 to 3 feet tall. I was convinced that someone was in there, and that they were going to break through the wall in my room. It freaked me out so much that my parents had to eventually seal the crawl space because I was so afraid of it. Bats love the insides of walls and their wings will make scratching sounds as they move. Their bodies are extremely flexible and compressible. They can go anywhere they can find a hole to fit their head through, anything a little bigger than a quarter, give or take. I once woke up in the dead of night to the sound of an emergency news report playing on the television. It was as if the news reporter was sat at his desk at the foot of my bed. My TV was off and unplugged and my phone had no news notifications set up on loud. I was also alone in the house. Still freaks me out thinking about it, and I have no idea how it could have happened or even been created in my mind. I've had crappy unshielded speakers that pick up AM radio stations. You can only hear it if you put your ear right up to it or it's really quiet. All my childhood I was scared of the stairs in my house. This happened because from time to time I would hear something that sounded like marbles dropping and rolling in my attic. I never understood what it really was, but as I grew older I stopped hearing those sounds and never thought about it again. My younger cousin was always a scaredy cat, and she was terribly scared of the dark, so she couldn't stand to go up or down the stairs of my house alone, which I thought was due to the fact that it is a not very well lit place. Last year, out of the blue she said to me, "You know why I always scared of the stairs in your house?" "No, because I always heard some marbles dropping and rolling in your attic." We had never talked about that before. I was shook to the core. This is a story my mom told me once and that my dad refuses to talk about to this day. Before I was born, they had no kids at the time. My parents were downstairs in the living room drinking wine in normal wine glasses and just chatting. Out of nowhere, they both hear this loud ding noise resonating from one of the glasses as if someone flicked it. They looked at each other puzzled since neither of them had touched it, but their gaze shifted back towards the wine glass where the noise came from when they heard a sharp cracking sound. They both watched in horror as a perfectly straight crack made its way around the wine glass, creating a perfect circle. My mom reached over and was able to easily pick up the top half that had just broke in front of their eyes. An anime character had just slashed it with their katana. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.